don't think we're going back to the same kind of trust in institutions. There's a lot of things that feed into this. The declining trust in institutions is in all sectors. It's particularly acute with media, but it is a general trend line. Technology obviously changes this in an irreversible way, particularly the kind of greedy algorithms that have come to understand that extremism and misinformation sells better, generates more clicks, and experts on radicalization talk about this a lot, that the way those algorithms work is like if you get someone, like I did all this work unmasking people in security camera footage during the January 6th rioting, in the siege of the Capitol, and there was a crowdsourced movement.
Can you not?
They were just tourists from it. What is it?
Having a good time.
Did you not see any of the footage? It's clear as day. They're walking through.
They were touring.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's it. That's what my story said, actually. Like these lovely tourists.
Sure.
The crowd was like scrubbing through these videos frame by frame, like, using facial recognition and trying all sorts of ways to find these people. And I was able to identify a few, collaborating with those people who were doing that crowdsource movement at a time when they were on the run and had not surrendered themselves to the FBI, but there were wanted posters and stuff. And it was, I highlight that context partly because you wouldn't think they would be confessional at a moment like that, but they all were. And the through line, obviously each case was different, was definitely this phenomenon we're talking about. Like it's the Pennsylvania mom who has 8 kids and she gets on Facebook and it's showing her extremist stuff, and they happen to grab someone like that who's already mad at mask mandates, and then they just get fed more and more content of escalating
pliable, and they got her.
Yeah, and it's the I don't mean to put sole blame on that, but it's a definite factor, and it goes to the point that you're making, that everyone is sort of in their own bubble consuming things that they agree with, and it encourages them to dig in more deeply rather than do the thing we should all be doing, obviously, which is to be open-minded to the facts wherever they may lead.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Thank you to Helix for supporting SmartList. Now, listen, if you're like me, when you go to sleep, you like your sleep to be similar to, getting in the way of some sort of a trank dart, and these people at Helix, they know how to fire it, and it'll hit you right between the eyes, okay? That's what my incredible Helix Midnight mattress really does for me. So the Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. All right, so the Helix Elite Collection, it includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. Nervous about buying a mattress online? You don't need to be. The Helix Sleep Quiz takes into account for individual sleep preferences to match you and your partner with the perfect mattress for you. You really want to feel like you're knocked out? You want that Helix Midnight. You want some sort of a light, restful sleep? I'm sure they got one for that. You want something that's perfect for naps? I'll bet they got some kind of a nap mattress. These people have it covered. Your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door. It's free of charge. Don't want to take my word for it? It's fine. Helix Sleep has over 12,000 5-star reviews, so you don't even need to believe me. Listen, Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/smartlist. This is their best offer yet, and it will not last long. With Helix, better sleep starts right now. By supporting Helix, you're allowing them to support the show. Go purchase your Helix and thank us later for your best night's sleep. helixsleep.com/smartless. We get support from Storyworth. With this holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique, just like the relationship we share. That's why I'm giving everyone I care about Storyworth. Storyworth is an online service that helps you and your loved ones preserve precious memories and stories for years to come. It's a thoughtful and meaningful gift that connects you to those who matter most. Every week, this is how it works. Every week, Storyworth emails your relative or friend with a thought-provoking question of your choice from their vast pool of possible options. Each unique prompt asks questions you've never thought to ask, like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done in your life? Or if you could see into the future, what would you want to find out? See? So after 1 year, Storyworth will compile all of your loved one's stories, including photos, into a beautiful keepsake book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Sounds great, right? So reading the weekly stories helps connect you with loved ones, no matter how near or far apart you are. So you can hear it in my voice. What you're hearing is excitement about the holiday seasons coming forward, and that I get to use this story. I'm a little fired up. With Storyworth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful, personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/smartless and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/smartless to save $10 on your first purchase. Happy holidays, y'all. Smartless is sponsored by BetterHelp. Now, here in my family, we love giving gifts, but sometimes, we'll sort of like, give each other helpful suggestions or want to be surprised. Certain members of the family like to be surprised, other members don't. Everyone's got their own thing. But here's the thing. You get to decide how you give to yourself, right? And the holidays are a great time to do that. So, whether it's by starting therapy, going easier on yourself during tough moments, or treating yourself to a day of complete rest, whatever it is, remember to give yourself some love this holiday season, okay? Like, for instance, therapy is something that I've given to myself over the years. My goodness, I could always take more and more and more, but every time I gift myself that, I feel like I've unwrapped a package of happiness and clarity. Right? Yes, you get it. All right. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/smartless today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/smartless.
And now, back to the show.
I'd like to get into our guest a little bit here about where one gets the amount of intelligence you've managed to pack inside your head there. Now, was there a lot of... Did you eat a lot of wheat germ as a kid? Was there like carrots or?
That was diet.
I don't know.
If you feed your kid enough wheat germ, they will get a Pulitzer Prize.
That's what I heard. Okay, confirmed.
It's in the box.
Yep.
We found it in the box.
What do we need to become a road scholar?
That's wheat germ and carrots, I'm thinking.
I'm always tempted, by the way, when I get some variation of this question, to say something truly insane. Like, I just eat the Joe Rogan thing. Like, Joe is right. I eat 6 tins of sardines every day.
Is that what cold plunge? You cold plunge. You cold your plunge.
Yeah, that's it.
You cold plunge.
Does he really swear by sardines?
Yeah. There was a little news item where he apparently thought he was getting poisoned because he was like getting too much mercury from the sardines.
I think about sardines and I get bloated.
No, they're Jason, they're very.
They're really good, and they are very healthy and
There's
moderate.
a lot of sodium,
Well,
guys.
they're not predator fish. They're
full of salt in my face.
So that's always safer.
Now I'm shit you.
No,
Slimming
he
for
doesn't.
this interview.
He doesn't. No.
Quiet Will. So you skipped a few grades. Quiet. You skipped a few grades in school. You entered college at a very young age. I want to know how that sort of educational experience. Yeah, a few grades. What was it?
7. It was 7th grade. I did a duty hazard.
No, you did not.
No.
That's why I'm so socially maladjusted.
No. There's only 12 grades before college. You skipped 7 of those?
I skipped 7 of them. Yeah, I went to college at 11.
Are you serious?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Wait, Ronan, you went to Yale at 11?
No, I went to Bard for undergrad at 11. I got into Yale at 15, 16. I actually took a little time then to do UNICEF work. I was like a youth spokesperson in a couple of African.
I mean, I'm really proud of my children, but a little less now.
Hey,
This is amazing.
Ronan, ask these guys what the last book they looked good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Might
are
have
we
been-
avid readers here or no?
Well,
This is a smart group. Jokes
I
aside.
enjoyed Tom Sawyer a lot. Does that count?
It's going
Huckleberry
back,
Finn.
Wait,
Sean, what about you?
What, the last book I read?
Last book. Pamphlets don't count.
The Giving Tree. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
This guy's writing books. Ronan, when was
I know.
when was your last book that you wrote? How long was that?
Catch and Kill 2019. I think I have the next one that's going to be a book. So I'm doing this sort of
Are we making news
transmedia
right now?
approach.
We'd like to make news on this.
No, and I can never get into specifics on like investigative topics that I haven't hatched yet because
Of course.
I always further to the point of like people can be skeptical or not, but I am genuinely led by what's the biggest but also most interesting and hopefully humanistic story. Like how can I ferret out the intricacies of the characters involved and be compassionate in the portrayal of even the bad people and so
Sure.
forth. And it's not about politics. And part of that being led by the facts and making sure that those are the kinds of stories that I do. And the way that I do them is I have to be willing to like throw them in the trash if they don't pan out.
Right.
I've done 6 months of work on a really giant political story that I didn't think was wrong factually, but it felt like it wasn't the misconduct being alleged wasn't serious enough, and the way the facts came together wasn't bulletproof
We're
enough.
fine with hearsay. If you want to just let us know just the rumors.
yeah, I'll give you the gossip.
The gossip.
So I can't talk about specifics, but yeah, I'm doing this like transmedia approach in a lot of cases where I'll do a print story for the New Yorker, and then either during or after or some combination do it as a podcast or an HBO series. My documentary business is at HBO, which has been interesting because I think I grew up with like a love of film, and I got my start as a TV news anchor, and I do love being able to tell the stories in different ways.
Well, what is it? One of my questions, I think Sean was saying, he was going to ask you this too. How do you pick? And I'm sure you've answered this a million times. I apologize, but what guides your picking of stuff to investigate?
It's a matrix of different factors. I think you want to assess. Will it potentially do some good in the world? Not in an activist way where it's not an op-ed when I'm doing this particular kind of relatively clinical investigative work, but you do want to
Find some social relevance in it?
yeah, you want to pick the stories where something potentially could change, not necessarily because you're proposing a specific change, but because those are the exciting, meaningful stories a lot of the time that cause people to sit up and take notice. And then you are looking at not just the strengths of the facts and constantly assessing as the facts come in, okay, is this like a slam dunk story on the journalistic side, but also, especially as you move between those different formats, is it a narrative arc that people can relate to and understand emotionally? Are there people involved that are rich, complicated characters that people will potentially connect to?
Talk to us about the thing that really drew you to public service in government and how that changed or didn't change, meaning is it the same thing that drew you into journalism? Was it a sense of altruism that then transferred into something different, or did you find the same draw in both?
Well, it's like probably for most of us to some extent or other, there's a mix of altruism and belief in public service and caring about other people and narcissism and ego and wanting to be successful, and that led to most of these decisions you're asking about. I was very fortunate to grow up with my mom, who is a big fan of yours, Jason, by the way.
I was a big fan of hers. I'm so lucky to have worked
she
with
really
her.
liked you.
Yeah, liked her a lot.
Yeah. You guys get to work together again. I'm trying to like encourage her to work more.
This was actually a film for the Weinstein Company called The X with Zach Braff and Amanda Peet, Charles Grodin, and me.
Oh, yeah.
I played an asshole in a wheelchair.
Was Amy in that?
What's that?
Yeah,
I think Amy was in that. Yeah, and Armisen.
What was it called?
It was called The X.
It was actually, if I recall from the deepest recesses of my mind, it was a script at the time titled Fast Track, and it was like a workplace comedy. And then Harvey Weinstein acquired it and did like a very Harvey Weinstein thing, which is he did reshoots and recut it and changed the premise that it was then called The X, and it was a relationship comedy.
I'm not sure where the title change came from, but I do remember very clearly the whole reshoot scenario where, you know, my character, I played an asshole in a wheelchair going after Zach Braff's girlfriend, Amanda Peet, and his Zach Braff's character's theory was that I was faking it in the wheelchair. That he's making grounds on my lady because my lady feels bad for him, and he's not even injured. He's faking it in the wheelchair. And the truth is that I really was somebody that couldn't walk. And then they tested the movie, and my character was testing a little bit too likable because you know he was an asshole in a wheelchair. It's fun to hate.
I thought you were going to say, yeah, you know, because so like.
No, and so they figured, well, now that's making Zach Braff's character seem very unlikable because he's the lead and he's trying to, you know, expose me. Anyway, so their big idea was to, well, let's make it so that he really is faking it to adjust and so that was going to be the reshoot. That was the reshoot. There was a big scene we had to reshoot where I stand up. And I was like, well, wait a second. I don't know if I'd play the character if I knew he was faking it. And I had a phone call with Harvey Weinstein where I said to him, I said, what are the Screen Actors Guild rules where can you really just make me reshoot a scene that changes the character completely, and now I'm a guy who's faking it, and he's like, yep, you're doing it. I was like, okie doke. We shot like 30 pages of new pages. Yeah. Yeah, Jesse Paris directed it. The great Jesse Paris. Yeah. Anyway, Mia was awesome.
Well,
went to Walmart. Ruh-roh.
Drop-off bins placed throughout more than 60 parks in the greater Cincinnati area. Those include 2 new locations in Erlanger and Taylor Mill. All kinds of string lights are accepted, although they should not be in a bag or a box. For more information, including what Indiana residents can dispose of, visit wvxu.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. The Middle East is back in war mode after what was always billed as a temporary ceasefire did indeed break down last Friday. Israel and Hamas have resumed fighting in the Gaza Strip. Gaza health officials say Israeli attacks killed hundreds of Palestinians over the weekend, and Israeli troops are now closing in on southern Gaza, where 2 million people are crowded. Meanwhile, senior U.S. officials are delivering their strongest warnings yet that Israel should avoid civilian deaths. In a moment, we'll hear how their boss, President Biden, is steering the U.S. response. But first, NPR's Fatma Tanis looks at how that response is posing challenges for American goals in the region.
The bombing was relentless in southern Gaza last night. Here's James Elder, the global spokesman for UNICEF in Gaza this morning.
I don't think there was more than a 5 or 10 minute period
throughout the course of the night, and I really didn't sleep, where something wasn't flying overhead or the sky being lit up.
The toll has been high. Israeli attacks have killed more than 15,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza health officials. And those who blame Israel also blame the U.S. The White House hasn't drawn red lines for Israel and says Israel can't be expected to live with the threat Hamas poses. But criticism for U.S. policy is growing. Meirav Sunshine is the senior Israel analyst for the International Crisis Group. She's based in Tel Aviv.
The U.S. up until now allowed Israel to kill a lot of people and target all kinds of civilian infrastructure. You know, it knowingly stood by Israel while it's continued with this operation.
The White House has requested $14 billion in new aid to Israel, in addition to the $3 billion in annual aid, and has not called for a ceasefire. Supporters of the U.S. policy say Hamas is to blame. Bradley Bowman is the senior director for the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a conservative think tank.
Have there been a lot of casualties in Gaza? Absolutely. None of them would happen if Hamas hadn't done what they had done on October 7th, and the casualty tolls would be a lot lower if Hamas wasn't employing human shields the way that they are, in a very cowardly manner.
But analysts say Israel's stated endgame, the eradication of Hamas, can't be realized without a whole-scale destruction of Gaza itself. That seems to run counter to U.S. goals. President Biden says he wants to see a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the administration wants Israel to be secure in the region, have relations with neighboring Arab countries, and it wants to avoid a regional war. There is a risk that the U.S. could get dragged into a wider conflict. Iran's proxies in the region have stepped up attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria and the Red Sea, with some analysts noting that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has urged the U.S. to take on Iran more openly in the past.
The Prime Minister of Israel has been known to want American presidents to engage in war with Iran, which both Obama and Trump have resisted.
That's Shibli Telhami, the Anwar Sadat Professor for Peace and Development at the University of Maryland. Arab states that recently made agreements with Israel have not pulled out, and Saudi Arabia hasn't taken a potential deal with Israel off the table. Hamas isn't popular among their leaders. But in the long run, Telhami says, the images of dead Palestinian children in the media make it more difficult for Arab nations to build on their relations with Israel because of the impact on public opinion.
What is at stake is a possible blowback, because in the Arab and Muslim world, the U.S. is seen to be the principal enabler, if not part of the war. It is probably impacting the opinion of an entire generation that is likely to last.
And while supporters of U.S. policy say Biden's backing of Israel and appearances with its leader give him more influence over events, Netanyahu has opposed the two-state solution that Biden calls for. Analyst Meirav Sunshine says at the core of it, this conflict is a political one that can't be solved militarily.
When you think about the children and the people and the generation of Palestinians who have only known occupation and siege and now only know aerial bombardments, that's just not going to breed anything that would provide, I think, stability or security for Israelis.
In recent days, 2 months into the war, some around Biden have signaled a slightly new tone.
As Israel defends itself, it matters how.
That protecting Palestinian civilians in Gaza is both a moral responsibility and a strategic imperative.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. But Telhami says the outcome won't change unless the president himself matches the tone and acts on it.
I don't see anything in this president's resume in relation to this issue that suggests that he's capable of reaping the benefit of this embrace of Israel to restrain Israeli behavior.
But he says there are growing signs that Biden's open support for Israeli military action in Gaza could be nearing its limit. Fatma Tanis, NPR News, Washington.
And that's where I want to pick up with our next guest. Peter Baker is chief White House correspondent for the New York Times. Biden is the 5th U.S. president he has covered. He also served briefly as Jerusalem correspondent for the Times. Peter Baker, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start there. Do you see signs, as you report on Biden, that he may be reaching the limits of unconditional support for Israel and Gaza?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a hardening of the public rhetoric. Now, they have told us that in private for weeks they have, of course, tried to guide or give advice or counsel the Israelis to be careful, more cautious about civilian casualties and to be more aggressive about allowing humanitarian aid in. But you're hearing the tone of these comments that you just played from the Vice President, from the Secretary of Defense. It's a sharper tone and less about Israel's right to defend itself, which they still say they're for, and more about its responsibility to protect people who are not the targets of the war.
Just step back and remind people listening why the U.S. is so invested in Israel, why for Biden the only response to the October 7th Hamas attack was to pledge unconditional U.S. support to Israel.
Yeah, I mean, Biden is a creature of his era, right? In his era, Democrats and really Republicans too, but Democrats were particularly strong about Israel and believe in the project of the Jewish state in the Middle East. It's in the last decade or two that many Democrats have moved away from that kind of unconditional support for Israel, much more concerned about West Bank settlements, much more concerned about the state of the Palestinians. And Biden, he didn't move. He stayed where he was. And if you look back at his history, you know, he was of an era where it was unusual to know people who had been in the Holocaust. And that was very powerful, I think, in formulating his thinking. His father talked about it at the dinner table. He hired Tom Lantos, who later became a member of Congress, who was famously a Holocaust survivor, on his staff. This is something that was very real to him. It was closer to his childhood, for instance, than it is to ours. And so I think that framed his thinking about Israel going forward.
Yeah. So, to what extent are domestic politics factoring in here? We keep seeing polls coming out, seeing how this is hitting President Biden's numbers, particularly when we come to younger voters, when we come to Arab American voters, and so forth.
He doesn't show much concern about it at the moment. I think the thinking in the White House is, look, yes, they're unhappy, it's not a good thing for us, but we're a year away from the election, and when it comes down to it, a year from now, hopefully this conflict will be behind us. They'll have moved on to some sort of reconstruction phase, maybe even a peacemaking stage. People will come to remember that the contrast between a Democratic president they may not be particularly happy with on all fronts, and Donald Trump, who in the view of these left-leaning voters are going to be far more objectionable, and that they'll get these people back. But we don't know, obviously. It's a lot of ifs.
I mentioned Biden is the 5th U.S. president you've covered, which prompts me to wonder, and this is unknowable, of course, but based on many years covering the White House, can you imagine past American presidents would have navigated this war in a fundamentally different way than Biden is?
I think so, and I think we see it even just, for instance, with the president that Biden served, President Obama. In just the last few weeks, you've heard him give across a much different type of message. He is much more of we have to understand both sides here. None of us have clean hands here. That's his phrase, I think. And it sounded very different than the way Biden sounds. And in fact, there's some friction there, I think, between the Biden and Obama camps because of that. They don't feel like President Obama's comments were very helpful to President Biden at this time. But I think President Obama, just as an example, would have certainly handled it differently, would not have been so full-throated in his support for Israel, would have been much more measured, maybe balanced, in his phrase, in how he handled it.
So let me start to bring us to a close by looking forward. There have been all kinds of questions about the day after, meaning what happens the day after this war in Gaza eventually, we hope, comes to some kind of conclusion. When you look